The final whistle has blown at the Amex, and Arsenal have come away with 3 points. Welcome back to the channel, and thank you very much for rejoining me. What a fantastic night for the Gooners. We've come away with a 1-0 victory against Brighton. I'll have some analysis for you to come, my verdict on our performance, on what may happen going forward in this month of March. Also, what happened elsewhere tonight, because that is very significant in the title race. Is it now ours to lose? Have we got one hand on the Premier League trophy after tonight's game? So coming into the game, we were missing Saliba, who suffered an injury following the Chelsea game at the weekend. We were without Odegaard once again, with Eze stepping in as he did at the weekend against Chelsea. So the game started pretty much how expected, really. Arsenal, a lot of times when we play in these games, we start off nervously. Things don't really go our way. In the second minute, we had to clear the ball off the line. Gabriel had to get back on the line because Raya made a mistake where he was nearly embarrassed by a chip from Baleba after his pass was completely wrong. He just got it completely wrong. It could have been a different game if that goal would have gone in. The little chip over Raya, it nearly happened. But 10 minutes in, guess what happens? After a shaky start, Bukayo Saka picked the ball up on the right-hand side. And what he did is he had a shot. It's about time we started having pop shots on the edge of the box, because anything can happen, just like what happened here. Saka picked the ball up on the right, as I said. He cut inside. Pretty much a trademark Saka move. He had a strike, looked pretty innocuous from where I was watching it, but it looked like it took a small deflection. The goalkeeper couldn't sort his feet out in time. It went through his legs, and Arsenal were 1-0 up. And the keeper, I think it looked pretty ugly from his perspective. He'll be disappointed with that. As the home side, Brighton then inevitably came back into it. The crowd and Hertzler got on the officials' backs as the game became more and more stop-start. It was a pretty dogged and tenacious performance in the first half from Declan Rice. He was industrious. He was working his way back. He just made sure that there was that screen in front of the back four. Nkapie looked very, very astute at left back, not putting a foot wrong at the moment there, especially with Calafiori coming back from his injury, and he was on the bench today. Gabriel, nothing gets past him. He's a rock. A little bit shaky to the right of Gabriel, though, with Mosquera. Mosquera really didn't settle in well. He got booked early on, and then Brighton started to target him. And he was quite lucky, in my opinion, not to have got a second yellow for a challenge that he made further into the first half. Again, there's been a bit of disjointedness, I believe, between the midfield and the attack. Gyökeres and Eze really didn't get into the game. They weren't involved for large spells. Not necessarily their own faults at times, but I don't think they helped themselves, especially when they did finally get the ball at their feet. Eze used it well, but it was more sideways and backwards than really looking forward. And when Gyökeres got it, he was very tightly marked, and he invariably ended up with the ball going back into possession of Brighton. So at half-time it ended 1-0, and the second half kicked off with Brighton starting well again. They put pressure on the Arsenal back line, making it difficult for us to get out, making it difficult for us to do anything with the ball in the middle of the park. And they were right snapping at our heels, making sure that we were honest and we had to respect them whenever we got the ball. But I still think we looked pretty comfortable. Brighton's fans, they got on our back. A lot of the same chants that we hear at most games. Same old Arsenal always cheating. It's annoying to hear, but they're entitled to chant what they want. They pay the money. They're in the stadium. They want to get on our backs, and that's the best way to get our backs up, really. So just before the hour, Arteta decides a change or two is needed because the game wasn't really going our way, even though we were leading, and there weren't any real significant chances that Brighton had created. But the territory, it was getting a little bit alarming. So on came Havertz and Trossard for Gyökeres and Martinelli. A few minutes later, he also brought Mosquera off the pitch to make way for Calafiori, who appeared to be it did appear to be the right decision. Mosquera was still on that yellow card, and he did look like he was being targeted, and Brighton were exploiting that. More and more when Brighton looked to play out, Declan Rice stepped in at them, nicking the ball away and starting Arsenal attacks high up the pitch. Just before 70 minutes, Hinchell would make way for Welbeck. Didn't get a great reception from the away fans, as you can imagine. They were quite tense at that point with the game still at 1-0. There were chances, and there were big chances towards the end of the game. Brighton were throwing players forward. They were winning headers in our box, but there was just nothing really penetrative. Raya largely unbothered by what was in front of him, especially with Gabriel making sure that the back door was closed. And again, a really good performance from Zubamendi in front of them, just making sure that Declan Rice can be that box-to-box midfielder that we need of him. But the more he does that, the more energy is expelled and the less we're probably going to need to expect from him as the season goes on. But we will have to keep an eye on that. I think Arteta needs to manage Declan Rice's minutes because he can't go hell for leather for 90 minutes of every game. And we do have Norgard on the bench, and he is a very good deputy. He can come in, step in, do a job. And these types of games, you need players like Norgard. In fact, it was a perfect game to bring on Mikel Merino. I'm gutted that he got injured. He's one of our most effective players when it's tight and scores a level, or Arsenal are just in front, or even if we're behind by a goal, bringing on Mikel Merino just adds something extra in there. Even having in there from the start, it's such a big miss for Arsenal, and we know that Mikel Merino will be missed going into the run-in with 8 games of the Premier League left to play. Mark my words, the Premier League is the priority. It'll be nice to see us in that cup final against Man City on the 22nd. It'll be nice to see us possibly go deep into the tournament in the FA Cup as well as the Champions League. However, the Premier League basket is where all our eggs need to go into, because every gooner out there, if you ask them what they want this year, it's to win the Premier League. I know we've never won the Champions League, and it would be amazing to win that, but the Premier League is the priority. So as this is just after the Brighton game, I haven't had the chance to look at any of the goals. I have looked at the results around the Premier League tonight. There were 4 other games. Chelsea got a very good win at Aston Villa by the looks of it. It looks like João Pedro got a hat-trick in a 4-1 victory. Fulham West Ham looks like a crucial game down at the bottom. Fantastic result for West Ham, who came out 1-0 winners and closed the gap on Spurs. They're still playing in the Newcastle-Manchester United game. That is 1 apiece at the moment, but every gooner tonight will be looking at what happened at the Etihad and thinking, is this now ours to lose? We have gone 7 points clear at the top, albeit having played a game more, but Manchester City dropped points at home to Forest in a 2-2, a Desmond 2-2 at the Etihad this evening. Manchester City 2, Nottingham Forest 2. They've drawn the game. We now are in pole position with 8 games remaining. 9 for City, but 8 for us. And now, even if City win their game in hand, they will be 4 points behind us, meaning that if that deficit still is the gap going into the game at the Etihad, we do not need to win that game. And if we lose, we will still be top of the table and it will still be in our hands. That's how crucial it is that we've got that cushion before the Etihad. Hopefully we can even make that gap wider. But for now, that cushion is 7 points, and it could be down to 4 if City win their game in hand, but they haven't even scheduled that game in hand away at Palace yet, so we don't even know when it's going to be played. Difficult not to get excited, but as I am a rational gooner, we will have to see what happens in the coming weeks. And focus now turns to the weekend and the FA Cup 5th round game at Mansfield. Thank you very much for joining me once again. And hopefully once I get some better equipment, I will be able to then show you my not so beautiful face, and we'll be able to go through more in-depth analysis. But for now, it's going to continue to just be an audio, more in the podcast form, but I'm sure you'll forgive me for now. I will be back at the weekend for the Mansfield game, but for now, have a fantastic evening to all my fellow Gooners, and good night.